just proof that this is the
Hey, and hi. Welcome to I Know, a Solo Beatles video cast where we talk all things solo Beatles. Today we have a very special guest. Two very special guests, I could say. We have the former Wings drummer who played on two Wings albums, and he played on Red Rose Speedway, Wildlife, and this classic album that nobody's ever heard of called Ram.
yes, inconsequential.
So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Denny Siewell. Denny, welcome to
Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. This is a big day for Fernando and I. Ram on forever.
Yeah, Ram on. Oh, that's a nice yellow one.
Yeah. This came from the box set last year.
Oh, nice. So, Denny, first of all, what is your favorite Beatles album?
Well, I think I have a tie as well, but I think I'm going to go with that Abbey Road. Because I remember I was on tour in Japan with Astrud Gilberto when it came out, and I bought the Japanese version of the CD and a little briefcase stereo, and I damn near wore that album out, and I still have that cassette, and it still works.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And Fernando, who's co-producing the Ram On 50th anniversary.
It's a tie between Sgt. Pepper and Abbey Road. Abbey Road is so special to all of us, and I feel like it's a template for a lot of different genres of rock and roll. Sgt. Pepper is super special to me, though, because my high school had a rock ensemble, and we performed Sgt. Pepper cover to cover as a concert when I was 16 years old. I was a junior in high school, and in many ways that trained me to what we are doing now, which is taking an album like Ram and creating a new version with a new generation of people. So the power of music in schools, which needs to never go away. So support music in schools.
Absolutely.
And what is your favorite Paul McCartney solo record, including Wings?
Ram.
Okay. Correct.
I think the question would be, what's our favorite solo album that McCartney did aside from Ram? Because Ram is unanimously considered the pinnacle.
Yeah.
You know, the moment.
What is your favorite McCartney record besides Ram, then?
Well, I mean, I liked McCartney, with the one with Junk on it. I really thought that was great. Actually, here's a little tidbit. When I met Paul and he was auditioning drummers for Ram, I just went I was impersonating him and Ringo. I just channeled the two of them and played what I thought he would like to hear.
Interesting.
It worked. I got the gig.
Yeah, and you've done well.
It all started with the Beatles with me, and then when I discovered McCartney's Wings era, it almost kind of eclipsed it to the point where it was all I was listening to. So I'm obsessed with Red Rose Speedway. I'm obsessed with Tug of War. I'm obsessed with the McCartney album because as a multi-instrumentalist, that album was a life changer because I didn't realize that Maybe I'm Amazed, which is my favorite song of all time. It's all Paul. It's Paul and Linda. So it's really cool to get introduced to the world of overdubbing and, buying a 4-track, asking for a 4-track for Christmas and, learning how to play all this stuff. But that's the cool thing about Paul is that there's 4 decades of material there to discover. And I feel like every decade has its masterpiece. And, Tug of War, Flowers in the Dirt, Memory Almost Full, Chaos and Creation. There's so many great albums, but Ram is the pinnacle to me. And it's an album that many people consider, one of the top 10 greatest albums of rock and roll to me.
It's the greatest album of the 70s in my eyes. And number 2 of the greatest albums of all time. It's like tied neck and neck with a Beatles album. Could go either way.
What's really cool about that record is that there's really only four main musicians on the record. Paul, Linda, actually it's 5. Paul, Linda, Denny, Dave Spinoza, Hugh McCracken, that made the core band and then the orchestra. But so a big part of it was Denny. And one of the things while we were making this record, I kept on asking was, did Paul tell you what to play? And I was actually very happy and very surprised when he told me that Paul put him in charge of the drum department. So all those beats is a Denny Siewell creation.
But one song, we were doing Uncle Albert, and I was just kind of playing a normal beat for Uncle Albert. And he stopped and he said, "Can you find something that's a little unnormal, abnormal?" Said something that just goes along, has more space in it and goes along with the vocal. So I went, okay, boom, that, put it over the ching, and by that, and he said, "Wow, that's great." That's the only time he asked me to play something a different way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, it was great fun. Every day we'd hear the song and we'd say, I'll never forget the first day he came in, we recorded Another Day, the first track. And Spinoza and I, Paul's playing the song, it's just another, boom, ding, ding, dong, ding, and it went to 3 from 4. And I look over at Dave and he looks at me and we both said, holy, that was unheard of. That just didn't happen in our lives as New York studio musicians. We're really going to be asked to make music. So it has to be good. So we knew it was going to be a challenge and a beautiful challenge.
So, like going back to the Ram sessions, was that like, how was Paul during the sessions? Because he was kind of still on the back burner of the Beatles breakup. Yeah,
well, he had an attitude of, I'm a musician, I'm a songwriter, I can't stay on my farm in Scotland. Linda kicked my ass, I'm here, we're going to make stuff. And
that's the good attitude.
He just had that attitude, we're making stuff. He had a lot of, all this music was in him. Hardly any of it was written there in New York. It was all done up the farm. He had sketches of the songs, and he, with the British musicians and the American musicians at the time, the grass is always greener. So they thought, British people thought New York musicians were the tops, and we thought English musicians were the tops. And he came here trying to find something different. And actually, do you know that track, Rode All Night?
I believe I do.
I'm going to jump ahead here, but Rode All Night just happened. We recorded 23 songs, I think, for Ram. And one day, he came back after lunch and the engineers had packed up and everything. I think it was a Friday. They were just getting ready for a weekend. So they were tearing stuff down. And he came back wanting to jam and he threw on his guitar and we started ding, 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 ding. He started slamming and I started slamming. We started playing and we look at the engineers and they're frantically trying to set up the microphones and stuff. So we were playing for 5-10 minutes and we stopped to take a breath. And the engineers said, and these are guys in suits and ties, they said, "Okay, Paul, we're ready now." And we went, "Oh no." So we said, "Okay, here we go. Take 2." And we just slammed on take 2. And it was beautiful. And that came out in the later version of the bonus tracks on Ram. But, when he was doing that, he started making up lyrics. And as he's singing, I rode all night, I rode all night, I rode all night till I finally hit the daybreak. For me, he tells me that I'm full of garbage, but he said, for me, that meant I've rode all night means I've finally found some people that I can make music with other than the Beatles. That's what it meant to me, and I took it as very special. And that track, I thought I had the only copy of that. The engineers slipped me a cassette of it. And years later, some fans sent me a proper CD of it.
Oh, wow.
Incredible drum performance, too. I mean, I can't believe your
It
foot.
is.
I mean, it's double bass drum craziness. It's amazing.
One bass drum.
With one bass drum, double hits. And,
even one pedal.
And also, maybe, that's also might be the precursor of the whole guitar and drums duo thing. Black Keys, White Stripes, Ravenettes, it's just drums and bass, drums and guitar and vocal, and it's so powerful. It's amazing.
There was so much fun. I've done probably a couple hundred records in my career, but Ram, especially that recording experience, was far better than any of them.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And that
So-
was the first record Paul ever made in the States, which is really
Yeah.
amazing because, you know, I mean,
And you know what else is weird about it? I never heard Paul play bass.
Really?
He played guitar or piano, you know, acoustic or electric, and sang the song to us on a pilot vocal mic, and either played piano or guitar. And it was just either Spinoza or Hugh McCracken on the other guitar, and me on drums. So I'm making up drum parts without hearing the bass, and he made up his bass parts off of my drum parts. He told me that, you know, and I never heard him play bass on those sessions. When it's all over, I get a box at the doorman brings my things. Come on downstairs. You have a package here with some records or something. And I go down and there's a box of the Ram album. I put it on. It's the first time I heard the bass part, the full album.
Oh
And
wow.
and I just sat there in amazement.
it's incredible.
Yeah.
Talk about being part of a moment in history that has affected so many people. I mean, too many people.
Ram, or the platinum version.
Amazing. And a hit record right off the bat with him. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Oh wow. So like because the album was unfortunately, and I don't know how it was, a critical failure. Like they compared it to Bob Dylan's Self-Portrait,
Ooh.
which I love Bob, but that's not that great of an album. I don't
How
think.
many records in the history of rock and roll have been panned by Rolling Stone that have been so influential? I mean, did Led Zeppelin ever have a critical success? Did Yes ever have a critical success?
Correct.
Because, you know, critics are just that, critics. Bottom line is, do we like it?
You know.
We have a question from a viewer, Oliver. What is your favorite track on Ram for both of you?
I think mine is Backseat of My Car. Simply because there's an iconic drum fill at the end of it and it's just required a little bit more musicianship than some of the other stuff. But I always love that track big time.
And we have another quick
I'm
question.
going to answer that question the same way I answered the Beatles thing. My favorite song on that record now is Backseat of My Car for forever. But I will never forget the first time I heard Ram when I was 8 years old. And I put that needle down on an old record I bought at a flea market. And too many people coming on and blowing my head apart. Because I was learning how to play guitar. And I was just like, this is the coolest song ever. And so you'll never forget that first time. And obviously the first track is very important. But Backseat of My Car is, a lot of people say Beatles quality. You know?
Yeah.
And
It
it's an
is.
incredible song.
And this is another quick question. What were the artists that inspired you guys to make musician to go into the music business, to play drums, and for you, Denny, and multi-instrumental for
Well,
you,
This is
Fernando?
to surprise you, but I wasn't a rock and roller. I was really a jazz guy. So my influences came from jazz drummers like Mel Lewis and Elvin Jones and John Coltrane and you know, Bill Evans and Keith Jarrett. Just it was the jazz world. And when I was in the Navy band, I started getting into pop a little bit, or not even so much pop, but rock and roll. And the things that I liked about it were the you know, the MGs, Booker T and the MGs, any of the groove stuff, all of the groove stuff, the R&B stuff caught my attention more than anything. And when I became a session guy in New York, I got to work with a lot of those. I worked with James Brown. I did a Motown, like a R&B record called A Little Bit of Soap Now Will Wash Away Those Tears. You know, and we were doing records up at the Brill Building every day, and we were doing a lot of that stuff. So I'm glad that I had that early introduction to that kind of music, which fed right into rock and roll. I mean, one of the first rock and roll records I made was John Denver, a record called A Little Bit of Take Me to Tomorrow.
Oh wow!
But my first recording in 67 or 8 in New York was J.J. Johnson and Kai Winding, the two trombone players. We made like a jazz record that had some crossover stuff into early pop. And it's still a popular record today, and that's 50 plus years ago.
Oh, wow.
Long answer, but
My answer is boring. I'm standing right next to one of the people that influenced me as a musician, because my mom played piano, but she was a journalist. My brother dabbled a little bit in guitar, but he was a computer genius. But a Beatles tape when I was 6 years old that I found in my mom's stash that led to a huge Beatles obsession. But my mom used to play a lot of jazz, and Michel Legrand was her favorite artist, a French artist who worked with Marvin Stamm. So again, it's all full circle.
Yeah.
But I was sitting next to the heartbeat of a lot of the recordings that I was listening to when I was 8 years old, and I really was learning how to play and saying, I want to do this. So it's really amazing to be collaborating in this manner with Denny, co-producing records. I mean, co-producing the first version of Ram he's done since the first one. So.
But now I'm going to go off script a little bit and talk about this guy too.
Okay.
He made it so easy for me I went up to his studio one day on a whim. He said, hey, would you come up and just put some drums on Too Many People? And some people may never know. It's a year or two ago. And I said, yeah, what the hell? I don't mind. He says, I got drums here and everything. I'll just go up, and it'd be fun to revisit those songs, because I used to perform these songs in my clinic when I do a drum clinic. So I've done it quite a few times at Beatle Fests and other clinic venues. But anyway, I go up to Fernando's. I walk into his studio. I can see that he's got everything you need there. He's got a beautiful old set of Slingerland in there. I sit down behind the kit. I throw some of my cymbals up. I brought my dad's snare drum along.
This is awesome. This is the snare he played on
The original snare drum that I used on Ram. It's 7 3/8 inch deep. It's a Levy Broadway. It's a really beautiful old drum. So I put it up, and he put the track on, and before you know it, he'd played all of the parts, and another friend of his put a few parts on, but it was the complete record minus drums. I just put the drums on. 10 minutes later, we had 2 tracks done.
That was the beginning.
Wow.
So when he said, let's do the whole Ram album, I remember how easy it was and how much gratification it gave me and how much fun. So I said, yeah, let's do it. So bang, we sat to it. And one day I think I recorded 8 drum tracks in 3 hours.
Well, because of COVID, we needed to keep the sessions down and the exposure down. So we did it in his drums in 2 sessions. And look, he's got the stamina of a 25-year-old, he just was able to do it and not even break a sweat. But luckily it wasn't too hot that day, so it was all good. But basically, it was a whim 2 years ago. I was in a band called Open Sound, and we were doing some covers, and we had, my partner had said, hey, we should do Too Many People. And I was like, hey, well, let's get him over for 2 songs. And I had suggested Some People Never Know, which is my favorite song on Wildlife. And it went so well that it was just an easy process, and it was a lot of fun. And again, I was pinching myself then. I'm really pinching myself now because of doing this entire project, which I had originally suggested putting together a Ram band and doing a show. But because of COVID, obviously shows ceased to exist. So it turned into an album, which in many ways is more gratifying because this record is going to be enjoyed by generations. And we just wanted to make a really cool new version of the record that will stand next to the original as a companion piece. And originally Denny was the sole original Rammer, and I was like, let's see what Spinoza's doing. And then I literally Googled Marvin Stamm, and I found his website, and we contacted him, and they talked for the first time in decades.
Yeah.
And obviously, unfortunately, Hugh McCracken has passed on, and Linda has passed on. So aside from Paul, every living musician on Ram is on this record. So it was really cool too to get stories from Marvin and from Dave, as well, because they were there. And Marvin wasn't credited on the original record, but so he said he wasn't. Yeah, he said only the rhythm section players.
Oh, right, that's true.
Orchestra was just listed as orchestra.
That's true.
So he said he was the most famous unknown trumpet player in the world in 1971 for his solo on Halsey on Uncle Albert. So,
and I met Marvin when I first got out of the Navy. I hadn't come into New York yet, and I heard about New Jersey. I lived in Pennsylvania with my parents. I was waiting for my wife. She just came over from France, and we weren't even married yet. And I heard about a jam session in New Jersey at a place called the Tally Ho in Valley Forge, New Jersey. And I went down there, and Marvin Stamm they had three horns: Marvin Stamm, Arnie Lawrence, a great tenor player, alto player, and Bill Watrous, the trombone player, playing with John Coates. Tony DiNicola was playing drums. And so I went down and I sat down, and Marvin said to me, "What are you waiting for? Get your butt into the city. You're going to be in the studios recording as soon as you do." And that's all I needed to hear. So God bless Marvin Stamm.
So now we brought him back. and it was really cool. He actually didn't have a recording setup, and I taught him how to record using his phone. And he recorded his both solos on Emerald Halsey through his phone, and it's really cool. Because that's another thing is that obviously COVID-19 was a terrible thing for music industry, but we all figured out ways to collaborate and through Zoom or through emailing. And we have over 100 musicians on this album from all over the world, and it was all through email. I mean, very few people actually came into my studio to record. It was mostly, and then that also was a technical disaster because there's a lot of different qualities of sound, but we were able to make it work. And we had an incredible Grammy Award-winning mixing engineer named Zach Ziskin who helped a lot to create, because he's also a lifelong Ram fan. So when you have that sound in your head, it's pretty easy to be able to get the sound to where it needed to be to do justice to the album.
Yeah. And what was it like meeting Paul for you, Denny?
Being what?
Like meeting Paul McCartney for the first time.
Well, I went down to this building. I didn't know it was an audition for Paul. I just thought that I was going to do a demo in some studio I'd never been in. And I walked downstairs, and he's sitting in the corner with his wife. And I looked at him and I said, "Hey, you're Paul McCartney." He says, "Yeah, I know I'm Paul McCartney." I said, "What the hell are you?" So anyway, I was used to meeting high-profile music people because I was making a lot of records with them. Now, this one set me back a little bit, but I didn't let him see that. so he asked me. He said, "Well, I'm here in town. I'm going to make a record, and I'm looking at some drummers. Would you mind playing for me?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't mind playing for you." He said, "You got a guitar or something?" He said, "No, just you." And there was a really terrible set of drums from SIR in this ground floor basement. And I said, "Yeah, what the hell? What do you got to lose? If you can't get it on by yourself, how can you get it on with somebody else?" And I think he liked that.
Life lessons.
I think he liked that. And so I sat down, and the first thing I did was I went to What Would Ringo Do? So I went right to the tom-toms, and I started slamming away. And we had some fun. He had me play some shuffles, some rock and roll, some ballads, just fool around. And I did it with a good attitude, and I believe that's what got me the gig.
Yeah.
The fact that I could play and still had a good attitude, that's what got me.
That's the good thing.
Yeah.
Very few people can do
2
that.
days later, you were in the studio recording another day.
Yeah, a few days later, it was funny. I get a phone call. He says, "Hello, Denny, this is Paul." I went, "Paul who?" He said, "Paul, the guy you auditioned for." Yeah, right. I thought it was somebody at my answering service or somebody just having fun with me. And he says, "No, it's Paul McCartney, and I'd like to hire you to do this album project with me." And I said, "Really? Okay, I'm thrilled. Let me give me a second. Let me look at my book. Let me see if I'm clear." And I just jumped, put the phone down and jumped up in the air. And I said, "Yes, I'm in. I can do it."
But what I didn't know about is that Paul hired 3 drummers.
Yeah.
And Denny was the first week. He was only supposed to do the first week of recording.
Yep.
And what happened?
Well, you can figure it out. But he hired Herb Lavelle, who was a beautiful black drummer, did a lot of the Motown or the R&B, the soul dates in town. What a great drummer, an older gentleman too. Herb Lavelle, and the other guy was Donald McDonald, who was a very popular studio drummer. He had some problems with drugs and stuff like that. But you didn't know if he was going to show up. But what a beautiful player. And he was going to start a week with me, a week with Donald, and then a week with Herb. And after the first week of recording with me, he just let those guys go. And he said, I like your style, and I think I want to keep you and do the whole record with you. So I was thrilled.
So I kind of want to move into Wildlife, which is an album that I absolutely adore, and it is in my top 5 McCartney albums. I know it's usually like people's least
top 5? Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's brilliant. This is a question from my friend Tom Hanyadi. Did you play trumpet on Some People Never Know? You can
I did.
Hear it. Awesome.
I did. And Sea Moon, and probably something else too. Yeah, play trumpet. In fact, I texted Paul the other day. You'll get a kick out of this. I asked him. I said, "Hey, I forget. Was it you or I that played the marimba part on Sea Moon?" And he got back. He says, "I'm not sure. The trumpet wiped all else from my mind."
When he gets next to Paul McCartney, it's not promotion. But yeah, that record is also very special to me, and I love the Underdog records. And,
yeah,
that's a record that also was critically slammed, and I think has some of the most amazing music ever made. Dear Friend.
Yeah. Dear Friend.
Tomorrow.
Dear Friend is one of my favorite McCartney tunes ever. I mean, I have a jazz trio, and back in 2012 we did a record called Reckless Abandon, and we did 5 McCartney songs in a jazz genre, and we did the ballad Dear Friend in this very room, and
wow.
We didn't rehearse it. The guys wrote out the chords. And we ran it down one time, and the engineer recorded it as a slow, moody ballad. And we all turned around and looked at each other and said, "What was that?" The magic was from beginning to end. And today I get emotional when I think about it. And we listened back and we said, "Not touching that. That's going on the record just the way it was." So yeah, I mean, and 5 of the 8 songs on Wildlife were first takes.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yes, Paul wanted to give the world a really honest new look at a new band, and we were starting from scratch.
And it worked, I think.
It was not even Henry yet. It was just Denny, Paul, Linda, and me.
Yeah, double Denny, double McCartney.
Yeah, we used to call Big Denny and Little Denny.
What one was Big Denny? You?
Well, I'm 6'3".
Oh, yeah.
Denny Lane's British.
My studio's in a double garage, and it has a very low roof, and he has to lean down to walk in. He's 6'4", right?
No, 6. I used to be 6'3". I'm probably 6'2" now. You get older, you shrink a little.
He's the tall guy. But yeah, so I didn't realize how tall he was till I met him. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, it was fun playing soccer with the guys, with the band. We'd go out on these. We were filming over at Elstree, and so they had us in a field and in a boat and all of this crap. And so we all had white clothing on, and they wanted to just play soccer in between the shots that they were taking of the band. And so we're playing soccer, and I don't know how to play soccer, but I know how to play football, American football. So I sent Paul flying, man.
Oh, no.
I hit him so hard, I get him body block. Yeah, we had a lot of fun like that, though.
And I want to talk about Mumbo, which is so wild and fun. Was that just a section of a jam, or was that
it was a jam? We started jamming. Paul loved to do that. We were in the studio, probably letting the engineer get good sounds and stuff. So
Tony.
Yeah, so we're just slamming away. we're slamming away. He wanted a rocker, so he was trying to write a rocker on the spot, which is great when it happens. But and it's funny because we got it roaring where it sounded good and felt good. We looked up, the red light wasn't on. So just as Paul said, "Take it, Tony," is when he turned the machine on. So you get the, you know, and then you hear the "Take it, Tony." So it was absolutely perfect.
Oh wow, wow. And
Yeah.
then I mean, it's like one of the most storming rockers in his entire career.
Yeah.
And like, was he like pretty like hurt after having 3 critically failed albums? Like, did that affect his attitude?
Not at all. He knew
Oh,
what it
wow.
was worth. You knew what he was worth. That didn't affect him at all. Critics have to write bad stuff. If they write all good stuff, they don't have a job.
Correct.
Critics are the biggest joke in the world. In fact, we were on the European tour. I shouldn't tell you this, but you seem like a nice guy. So we're on the European tour, and we had just been busted for marijuana in Sweden. And so a little bit after that, this writer from some British paper, his name was Paul Dacker. That I remember. It should have been Dagger. But he showed up and he said, "I want to do a feature piece on you guys as a family unit. I'm not reviewing a concert. I'm just making a piece on you. I'm not going to talk about the drug bust or anything. Just the way you live as a family." So Paul granted him an interview, and he hung out with us and everything. He came to a sound check, and that was the last we saw of him. 2 days later, the article comes out, and it's a complete review of the concert that he wasn't at.
Oh.
And it was a horrible review. So Linda had little Mary and Stella were tiny at the time, and they had they took one of these little Queen Elizabeth plastic soap dishes from the fancy hotels we were staying in, and they put one of the kids' turds in it and look at this guy. That's what they thought of reviewers, you know,
Yeah.
critics.
Denny Siewell, the book coming soon.
I got a million of them.
Oh yeah. He one of the coolest things about working with Denny is getting to hear all these stories, and he's full of amazing stories that make you go. I mean, it's incredible. Tell him about the drum kit you used on Ram.
Oh, that was cool. That was cool.
Hold on to your head. It's about to explode.
You know, I do the audition. He hires me for the gig. Meantime, my friend from Pro Drum calls me up. He says, "Hey, Denny, the musicians, the Museum of Famous People in New York is going out of business, and they have an auction with the Ringo Starr drum kit from Shea Stadium concert." I went, "Wow." He said, "I'm going to go to the auction. Would you like the kit? Because I don't want the kit, but I want the snare drum." I went, "Yeah, but I'm not a million. I can't afford that, you know." So he goes to the auction. He calls me back a couple of days later. He says, "I got the kit." I went, "No kidding, man. That's beautiful." He says, "You still want the two?" I got the 2 tom-toms and the bass drum. He said, "You can have the 2 tom-toms and the bass drum. I'm keeping the snare drum." I said, "Well, yeah, how much?" And he goes, "Give me $300. It's yours." I went, "Oh my God, a deal." So I went and picked them up. And the first day in the studio at CBS 52nd Street, Paul comes in. "Hey man, how you doing? You ready to go?" I said, "Yeah." He said, he double taped them. And he saw I had the Beatles head still on the kit in the drum booth. And he said, "That's your drum kit? You got the Beatles drum kit?" I said, "Yeah." And I used my father's snare drum, and that was on the whole album. So that was,
wow.
And then years later, Ringo spoiled it. He's a buddy of mine. I see him all the time here in LA. He said, "Nah, that wasn't really the original kit. I had the original kit." I beg to differ with him. I think it was. Anyway.
And I didn't realize that until I saw a picture of Denny from the Ram sessions, and I saw that Black Oyster, and I was like, "Oh, he's right."
And I think there were 7 original kits, and I'm pretty sure it was one of them. As a matter of fact, I gave the drums back to Frank because they weren't really right for what I was doing at the time. It was great to use them on that album, but I was really a Gretsch nut. I loved the sound of the Gretsch drums, and I just signed a deal with Gretsch, and they made me some beautiful set. But I kept that Beatles head, and that Beatles Head 2 years ago or so, when Ringo sold that kit that I used to play up at Paul's farm in Scotland. He sold that kit for $2.1 million.
Wow.
And the guy that bought it also bought a separate head for $2 million. And I had one of those 7 originals. I kept it at my mom's up in PA. I kept it at my Uncle Bunny's place in New York City, a cartage place. I don't know where the hell it was. When I finally started looking around for it many years ago, it wasn't there. And I broke my heart, but I didn't know the value then. And now when I think about it, I just cry.
Yeah.
Denny, you're a millionaire in other ways.
That's right. Yeah, the money helped though.
All right, that's all good though.
But I mean, like, the drumming on Mumbo, like, I'm gonna guess, like, how long did that jam go on for? Was that just for the track, or was that like?
No, we were in there just, you know, how you get something going for the engineer to just be able to get sounds on everybody before you start recording. So it was kind of like a sound check for the engineer. And we were just, you know, having fun. And all of a sudden it's getting real good. And he looks up, he says, "Take it, Tony. It's not going to get any better." And so that was a lot of fun. One of the other tracks from that session, though, was Mickey, Love is Strange, the reggae tune that we did.
Which was a cover track, if I recall, right?
Pardon? Yes.
That was
Ian and Sylvia's Love is Strange. Yeah. I keep thinking Mickey, it's Ian and Sylvia. And yeah, they were, both of Paul and Linda came back from Christmas around the Ram period. They came up to my apartment in New York, our apartment, and they were on fire. They had just heard reggae music for the first time. And they brought all these records with them. And we were listening to these reggae records, and Paul and Linda were just nuts over it. So we're doing Wildlife, and what can we do with this? They really wanted to cover Love is Strange. So we're thinking about a different way of approaching it. And I said, reggae. Paul turned around and lit up like a Christmas tree. And I started playing a reggae beat. He started playing, and that was it, man. We put it together, and it was a slight departure from traditional reggae, but we were the first white pop group to do a reggae tune.
correct.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then yeah, Seaside Woman was another thing, another reggae thing. And Simon.
Linda's song was Seaside Woman. Sea Moon, Paul wrote. You know, here's an interesting fact too. When we were doing Sea Moon, doodle-doo, do-do-do, 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 you know, so we're fooling around in the studio. We're over at Barnes, we're at Glenn Johns is engineering, and he's producing with us. And we're at the Olympia. No, what's the name of that studio? Olympic, yeah. We're at the Olympic studio, and we're just screwing around with this song, you know. And so I wasn't playing the drums. Paul was playing, I forget. Henry started playing my drum set. And Paul starts playing this song, Sea Moon. So I pick up the bass. And I don't know how to play a bass at all.
According to that.
Oh, there's that picture. But I start, I couldn't play for it. You know, making all the strings buzz and all of that stuff. So he replaced it. But I'm playing bass. He's playing whatever he played. And Henry played drums. Henry played about 1/10 as much as I would play. And that's what made it so beautiful. It was so sparse. And he just replaced my ugly bass part. And that was the record, man. And I loved it.
It's Paul's favorite sound check song, too. It seems like he plays it every sound check.
Yeah.
It's a very special song.
And then I put the marimbas on, and I said, oh, by the way, you know, I can play trumpet. And just a week before, I was down to Portobello Road to the antique places, and I bought a pocket trumpet, a little cornet about yay big, and it had a little leather bag and everything. And I sent it into the Shaftesbury Avenue where they have all the music stores. And some guy redid the whole thing, re-silver and everything. It was like a brand new horn. And I just, so it blew his mind when I started playing the trumpet, you know.
Wow.
It's incredible the amount of freedom that Wings had in the studio. There was no rules. And You know, that when you guys put aside your egos and say, "Oh, Henry, it's okay, you play your drums. I'll
Yeah.
play trumpet." You know.
Well, usually, I mean, I have a picture. I'll get it down for you, but I have a picture. Whenever I got up from the drum kit, Paul sat down and started playing.
Wow.
He just loved it.
The look of worry on your
Here's a
faces.
rarity.
The look of worry on your faces. I hope he doesn't break the bass drum head.
Oh wow.
Yeah, look. There you go.
There you go. The darn Venetian blinds are screwing it up, but
It's
Wow.
great.
that's it.
I saw that photo. I'm like, that's cute. But yeah,
Awesome.
I mean, that's incredible. All the different stories of just all the amazing improvisation moments that happen. with
Yeah.
Wings. Just some bands are very calculated.
Yeah.
And there's also no producer that was there going, do this, do that. You guys were very free in the studio, which is great.
I'll never forget Wildlife. I mean, we were in the studio up at the Abbey Road 2, and we were upstairs in the booth with Paul. And this is before flying faders and automation. So everybody had their assignment when we came to mix, and you'd have your group of faders to move up and down. And it was like a damn performance. If everybody made their assignments on the mix, it was a good mix. If not, you stayed till 5 in the morning or later, whenever we got the whole thing done. It was truly a band concept. And Paul wanted all of us to be known like George, John, Paul, and Ringo.
Exactly, and I agree
He
with
wanted
that.
the public to know each and every one of us and everything about us. So we spent a lot of time in the press office and doing interviews. Yeah, it was quite a memorable time in my life.
Yeah, and like what people consider like Wings was just Paul. That's so wrong.
We
Wings-
worked in Paul's band.
Right. I mean, I can, as a discography, I think of it as Paul McCartney's discography, but Wings was not just Paul.
Yeah.
All my favorite record stores have a Wings section and a Paul McCartney section. Yesterday and Today Records in Miami had a Wings section and a Paul McCartney section, and that's how I knew they were legit. Do you play an instrument, Hudson?
No, I play a little bit of guitar, but I'm not very good.
There you
So
go.
I-
That's all that matters.
Yeah. So I kind of want to discuss the sessions for Red Rose Speedway, and we'll talk about the bonus cuts on the Red Rose Speedway Reconstructed album. What were those sessions like? Because I mean, this was like a kind of like a bigger turnaround for the critics to say, like with it being a double album. What originally being a double album, like
Right. Yeah. Well, we recorded that at several different studios. We were at Olympic and Barnes with Glenn Johns on some of the tracks. It just didn't work out. Paul was a better producer for himself than anybody else could have been. He tried using Jim Garcia to finish up the Ram album for a couple of tracks, and that didn't work out either. But Paul was such a great producer for his own material that it was just hard for anybody to work with us. And so anyway, we had a bunch of time at Olympic Studios. We did some stuff at Abbey Road. We also did the old Trident in London. We did some stuff in Trident Studios as well, and we wrapped up some tracks that were on the ramp that were released. It was recorded for Ram, but never released, like Little Lamb Dragonfly, Get on the Right Thing. So we had some other stuff to finish up there, and we were really honored. We'd kind of become a band. Henry was part of the thing, and we were going to work every day and coming up with beautiful stuff. And then EMI decided, well, listen, we're not going to make this a double album. We think it might be a mistake so early on in the career to release a double album. So we prefer just take the best, so that was the hard part. We had to sit down and pick the songs that would fit on a record too, because it was came out in vinyl. So we had to pick through all of these songs that we recorded and try to come up with a serious sequence that would work for a single album and show where the band was at in its time period. was
Now, as a whole, are you a single, the Red Rose double or Red Rose single? Like, what do you like better?
Oh, I think they made the right call. It's just sad that more of that stuff couldn't be. It was hard. It was really hard to pick the tunes that were going to go on the single album and what we're going to stick back on the shelf to be sorted out and released later on as B-sides or whatever. That was hard to do, but that was a band effort too.
Right. And
We didn't sit down and vote on it, but it was almost to that degree,
Red Rose was a rare album that I first discovered on CD, and it had bonus tracks. And my favorite song on that was "I Lie Around." That was like
that's one of my favorites too.
Well, that was recording during RAM, and that was Marvin was on that.
Really?
Oh yeah, that was the sweetening dates up at Phil Ramone's A&R Studios.
Wow.
Yeah, George Martin did the arrangements.
So who sings "All Over the Place"?
That's Paul.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I always thought that was somebody else.
That's Paul. He loves that shit.
I know. That's a great track. That's right. It has that big horn section.
And all that weird stuff that was like Loop, the first Indian on the Moon.
Oh, I love that song.
Oh, that's a great song.
When people ask me, like, what's the proggiest moments of non-prog artists, I usually say Loop, the first Indian on the Moon.
It's the most Pink Floyd-ish McCartney ever went, I think.
It does. It sounds like avant-garde prog music, Pink Floyd, Focus.
Paul was thinking that Loop was kind of be like a jazz piece. Really. So when I had my jazz trio record, Reckless Abandon, go back and find this. It's on Apple and all that stuff. We did a version of Loop in a jazz waltz. That's brilliant. Paul heard it, and I'm sure that it rocked him down to his socks, man. He loved it. He loved all these different takes we did. We did Coming Up and Dear Friend and Bip Bop and but Loop, the first Indian on the Moon, that was kind of really weird. And then there was another track on there that wasn't released, Jazz Street.
Jazz Street's killer. Night Out. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the opening on the double LP.
Yeah.
Even though Big Barn Bed is
I still got the acetates from that from EMI.
Oh wow. Big Barn Bed is the only way to open Red Rose Speedway in my eyes.
Well, it opened up James Paul McCartney really well too. The PBS special.
Yeah.
With the
100 TVs.
Yes, 100 TVs as the audience. One of the only other drummers that's on the Ramon record, Matt Teku, said that watching James Paul McCartney made him want to be a drummer. That was the moment that he said, "I want a drum kit." So he played some percussion on Heart of the Country, and it was just like,
yeah,
it's such a cool thing. It does. You do look like a badass there, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a very expensive nudie shirt on.
Yes. You were very American. You were definitely
Yeah.
You
In the description of each member, it says Denny Siewell, about as American as kidney pie.
That's how I actually learned about stone. I didn't understand the question about weight and stones. I guess that's how I found out about the British.
Right.
It's about pounds over here, I got lots of that's okay.
So another question I wanted to ask you. What was it like on the McGear album, which is an album that I've come to really like? Because I know you played drums on one track, I believe.
Yeah, I don't remember much about that. He came into the studio and we were recording, and I think the band was just there, and I don't know, is it just one track on there?
Yeah, it was. I think it was.
It was probably just something that we did where Paul took his voiceover off it and let probably something that was meant for Wings that Mike, he gave it to Mike, and Mike just put. Mike's a great guy. I stay in touch with him. He's a cool guy, very much an artist, and I like Michael very much.
Wow. And so Beatlefest. So before this thing called the coronavirus came afloat, what did you go to like all the Beatlefests and stuff?
No. They would get tired of me. So every couple of years, Mark Lapidus would invite me, to come, and the only way I would come to be a guest is if I got to do my Ram clinic. I would he would grant me 45 whole minutes I would play along to the CD of Ram in the main auditorium, and it was the highlight for many of the Beatle fans there. Because you don't get to hear Ram. People don't perform that music that much. And so hearing me play along with the tracks and tell a few stories about what it was like, and that was always a highlight of the festival. And I believe some of that footage is always available through Beatle Fests.
Yeah. So I'm going to go through, and if you are still, the viewers, if you are still kind of looking and see some questions, we're going to, and want to type in a question, I'm going to go through all of them, and we'll ask you to them, and I'll flash them on the screen.
What you got?
So from Michael Mativier, friend of mine, do you have a favorite time signature that you love to play?
Well, 7 and 9. No, 4. More 4. I like 4 straight ahead. Boom. There's no reason to add it up unless you're trying to screw up the dancers.
Unless it's a wall.
No, I love odd times. So I mean, obviously, and when I'm doing a lot of film work, we're recording the big scores for the blockbuster movies. It's a 5/8, and then it'll go into 3/8. So I have to be versed in all of that stuff. And if you listen to the film Waterworld, for example, I'm in the drum section there, the percussion section. There's 8 of us. And I don't think there's any section of that score that's in 4/4. It's all odd times. So it's fun. I like odd times. So thanks for that question.
And then another one from Michael. Are there any contemporary drummers that you find exciting for their style?
Oh, there's tons of them. There's tons of them. I mean, I would hate to start mentioning them because I'll forget somebody, but there's tons of great drummers. The jazz world's got a bunch of up and comers. The rock world's got plenty. I couldn't mention one without. Some of my favorites are. I still love guys like Purdy and what's his name? Oh, geez, now I'm going to forget it. The producer. He played with the tall guitar player. I'm going to look like an old man now. I just took a picture with him the other night. He was in town. Anyway, I have so many. I can't mention one drummer without mentioning 100. And we're a society of our own, and we're very closely knit, and we stay close. I mean, I'm always on the phone with Keltner, and I see Ringo 3 times a week sometimes, and Greg Bissonette, I bump into him all of the time. We all miss Joe Picaro, and it's a family, and there several times a year drummers get together here in LA, and she's in this little room here. I mean, I have guys that come over once a month till the COVID hit. We'd have a drum hang. Joe
Wow.
Barbara is a great jazz drummer, and Leather Barrow, and we sit down and we play. I have 2 sets of drums, and we just play and
We
jam.
talking about Steve Jordan.
Steve Jordan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tall guy would be John Mayer.
Yeah.
I could speak Siewell.
Yeah,
I just realized I'm like tall guy produced
Steve Jordan. I was at a Christmas party in 1971 or something at David Lucas's studio in New York, and there was all of the cats were there. We're having wine and celebrating Christmas and all. Back from my gig with McCartney, and a bass player and a drummer started playing in front of all of the heavyweight cats in New York, and everybody stopped and kind of slowly turned around and said, "Who the hell is this?" And that was Neil Jason and Steve Jordan, and it was amazing, very memorable. Yeah, let's go. We're running out of time here.
Keep on going.
Yeah. Let her rip.
What was it like being on the university tour?
All right, that was insane. I get up to the house. Paul says we're going on tour. Just come on up to the house. I went, what? So I go up to the house. He says, "Where's Monique?" And I said, "What do you mean?" "She's coming." What? So Paul calls my wife up. He says, "Get your ass up here. We're leaving as soon as you get here." So she had to pack a bag, get somebody to watch the cat, get a cab, get up to the house. And we threw everything in a truck and a van. Paul was driving the van, and we drove up north without a place to play, without a hotel reservation. We said, let's go to a university. So we went to Nottingham University first. And we asked, "Do you got a place where we could put on a concert tonight?" He said, "Well, I don't know. The kids are in finals right now." And they said, "Well, we got Paul McCartney out there in the van." So the kid from the student union comes out and Paul waves at him. "Hi." They said, "Yeah, you can play here tonight." So we did 10 or 11 shows like that. We stayed ahead of the press. They didn't know where we were going to turn up. We showed up. We set up while the guys were setting up the gear. We had very little gear. We played in lunchrooms sometimes. While the guys were setting up the gear, Paul, we would get in the van and we'd go find a hotel that would take dogs and stuff, kids. And we had dogs, kids, and the band. And it was brilliant. At the end of the night, we take the kid with the box of money and we go, "One for you, one for you, one for you, one for you." And on to the next one. Go back to the hotel, sing songs all night till we fell asleep, get up in the morning and go find another place to do it. We did it 10 times or 11 times. And I've written a story about it that has never seen the light of day. So I'm hoping to get that published. It's really wonderful. And Paul's seen it. He loves it. So I'm looking for somebody to publish this damn thing.
So, Denny, I want to thank you for coming on. I know. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Fernando.
What a pleasure. Thank you so much for keeping the music alive. And you know, your generation is in charge of keeping this music going for the rest of the world, of the history of the world. So very cool.
Yes, thank you. All right, I'm going to end this stream.